Hey there, greetings to my people from here at the Great Start Studio, where all of my drumming dreams are coming true. It's true. So this is where I'm shooting a video of the entire instructional series here in the studio, the 13 volumes of the London's Great Start Drum Set series. It's printed and the Kindle versions are available on Amazon as well as on my website, which is London's Great Start Drum Set. You can go there and check it all out. All my new videos from the studio will be available on that website for online lessons. Today I'm going to be talking about revealing some of my original drum heroes, what I call the Artistic Influence series. Drummers that I can actually see some of their playing in mine, that they've influenced me to that level. Drummers who truly changed my playing for the better, all the way through. There's some influence there in my actual hands and feet when I play. If in the studio, if I made posters of all the tribute, as a tribute to all the people, it'd just be every inch of every wall would be covered. It's just that these are the ones that have really, really influenced me in some foundational sort of way. So I made these posters as a tribute and a reminder of these great players. They're in my office. I'll be showing you. There's just too many to cover them all, but a handful that have really actually, I can see in my playing. There's so many great players who have inspired me in my drumming, but these are the select ones that have some way become a part of my style, my diversity, my teaching, my writing, and helped me develop my unique voice, which is a hard thing to find. You have to really listen inside. So anyway, enjoy the whole Artistic Influence series, and I'll be running them down, and I'll see you at the end. So next up on my video series of inspirational drummers I have in my office is Deen Castronovo. Now, Deen Castronovo and I grew up here in the same town, virtually the same age. I was in a band when I was like 16, and the guy was a recording geek, so we would basically write songs and record every day. That was his whole thing. And so we wrote all these songs, recorded, and somehow somebody found out about the band, as they do, and came over and watched the band. And we kind of played a bunch of songs for this guy. And anyway, when we were done, he goes, we were like, "Hey, what'd you think?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's okay. But have you heard of this drummer, Deen Castronovo?" And it was the first time I'd ever heard of any drummer outside of my school, my particular school. And I was like, "No." And he went on talking about Deen Castronovo. This is the first time I'd ever heard about Deen. Deen, I went on to college, and then I started buying all of this music that Deen was on. It just happened to be, he would end up on all these Shrapnel record label projects. Tony McAlpine, Marty Friedman, a whole gob of them. And his playing just leapt out. And then I went back and then I bought Wild Dogs. He was in a band called Wild Dogs before that. And Dr. Mastermind was one of the guys from the Wild Dogs, Matt. And his playing is just ferocious on that stuff. And it's just absolutely young and hungry in every direction. And when you side by side Deen next to other drummers that were on the Shrapnel label, Atma, even Tony Aldrich, a bunch of them, Deen has a way of playing aggressive music that is not taking up everything that he has to play it. And what I mean by that is that he sings. And if anybody's seen Deen sing, when he was with Journey, he sang a bunch when they were looking for a singer. And then he always ended up singing quite a number of the songs. Arnell would kind of take a break from the stage and he would sing. He's got an unbelievable voice. If you ever just look up Mother Father, it's a Journey song that he sings. And it was one of my favorite songs from way back in the day. And the next thing you know, he's singing it. He's killing it. He's just killing it. And then I realized why this is because he's playing off the melody. He's not just like riffing out to the feel of the song exclusively. He's trying to propel the melody. So anytime there was a guitar line that Tony McAlpine would do that is the melody, he would pick up on the rhythm of that melody and play it like on the bell. He would play that bell line. He wasn't just like playing whatever he wanted all the time. He was just playing to propel the parts in the songs. And there was a whole bunch of iterations of Deen when he went through that, and then he was in Journey. But before that, before Hardline, and there was Bad English, and it started doing kind of real commercial sort of music where he was getting paid to really just lay down a drum track that was clean, that was not aggressive, that was pleasing to the masses, that was a ballad or whatever it was. And Deen has both of these worlds. He's got both of these worlds in such a way that he's not bound by shredding out like he did on Anvils with Marty Friedman, or like Forbidden City, or like if you ever hear Kill the Guy with the Ball, which was Steve Vai, one of Steve Vai's tracks. He's just going off in every direction. Like that's just what they wanted him to do. And then yet, once again, the self-control to say, okay, but now I'm playing a song that has a different sort of purpose. And just playing the groove of that song, it's hard to find. That is a hard combination to find. I think it's because he thinks through singing, and so he's really just propelling the melody, and he's not trying to get in conflict with the melody. And so you'll hear a lot of guys when they're playing kind of tapped out at the end of their ability, they lose track of like lining up. They'll be lining 80% of the notes up kind of with the song, and then the rest they just go, well, whatever, because they just kind of have tapped out kind of their RAM processing, and they just can't keep track of how to absorb the song in and graft in with all those other parts of the song. Maybe they just don't want to, but really a lot of times it comes down to that they just can't. They just don't have that extra thing. Deen has that extra thing. There's a number of things that I really loved about Deen right away, and that is that he's propelling the melody, that he's always trying to think up something to play in these adventurous sort of musical settings, that he was the first guy that I heard that played triplets in this kind of aggressive square way. I don't call it 12/8, but when you think of something that's 12/8, and then when you double up the triplets from 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 2 1 2 and 3 1 2 and 3, or 1 and 2 and 3 1 and 2 and 3, these rhythms start becoming more square. Now I explained this in the series a lot between straight, square, round, and split phrases. And once I discovered that, I was able to lay out the series in a way that finally made sense to me as far as what was a groove type. And so these are different facets of groove types, of phrase types, of rhythm types. And so Deen has this way of playing triplets in a very aggressive sort of way. Before that, they were always really bouncy and rolly. And, it was Roller from April Wine, or, it was Boys Are Back in Town, or these type of tunes where they were always rolling. Love that. I love that. But Deen had a way of making them more aggressive, just playing kind of cutting across in twos and then doubling that up. And he just hears that in there a lot. That radically affected the way I think about heavy rock triplets. He just has a very aggressive way of doing that. Of course, Deen has a whole list of what I call monster fills, of these fills that just come just bombastically in this 32nd note or 64th note sort of way, and between your hands, feet, and double bass. And that was a huge shrapnel thing. Of course, I ate all that up. If you listen to his playing on Tony McAlpine's Premonition, there's just tons of fills, right? It's just like with Dr. Mastermind, just like all the way back with the Wild Dogs. He just has a lot of different fills to say. Obviously, very comfortable with the numbers, 2s, 4s, 3s, 6s, like the beginning of Anvils is in 5. He just has a lot of things to say there, and it just comes from a very, very natural place. He's not like just studied sort of person. he just has always had this real musical sense of these numbers. So these things really affect me. If I think of a rock track, I can't help but think about Deen. Deen affected me in rock music more than any other drummer. It just happens to be, we're from the same town. It happens to be that when I owned a drum shop, his older son, Kyle, would come in all the time and just play. He would I'd just go, hey, go at it. He would go in there and just play, like for, 20 minutes. And he sounded just like his dad. He just does. He's just got the same way of approaching triplets, approaching double bass. And then Deen had me teach his son, his youngest son, Roman, for a long time, his nephew. I've had many conversations with him. I've seen him in many, many shows. I used to go see him play when he would play with this local guy here called Lubansky, and he would just kill. He always had these huge drums, and every time Deen was in a room, he like filled up the room with Deen. Like his sound was just he that's who he is. He would just throw down all these notes in all these directions, and every time I was so inspired by watching all the flamboyancy of his double bass playing. Early on, when double bass was a lot of constant notes, Deen was really experimenting with breaking those notes up, and that's where it really started hitting me, because that's how I think of double bass. I like double bass in these sprints of notes. Sometimes it's kind of like the frame. You can have the frame of the picture be constant notes, and then the answer is broken notes. And man, when he did that, like I said, in Forbidden City and different songs, I was like, there you go. You're speaking my language, right, of how I hear double bass. And so, in so many ways, Deen has really affected me, because we're in the same pool here in a sense. Of course, he's just a huge fish in a small pond here. So everybody has a Deen story here. And I'm basically in Salem, Oregon here, and everywhere you go, somebody's talking about how they have a cousin who worked at a Dutch Brothers coffee, and they talked to so and so, and they know so and so. It's always, I go, everybody has this Deen story. Everybody understands, who's been in the same town with somebody who's famous, how these stories are. And I have way too much to talk about in just this video, but just as far as just the drumming is concerned, all of those early Shrapnel records, I couldn't wait to get another one and just see if he was on there. Always disappointed when he wasn't on there, and I think it's Tony McAlpine's second one. He split the record basically with Atma and Noor, and the difference there is so big. It's so clear to me that the tracks that Deen played on had this little extra clarity in them. It's amazing when you get people right. I always said this, that if you could play, a lot of times when a drummer plays a record, he plays the whole record, and you really only compare him to him. And so, but when you have a record where you have multiple people playing, when they did, when Portnoy did Working Man tribute to Rush, and he played a bunch of tracks on there. There's a who's who of rock guys playing tracks to Rush there. And the tracks that Deen did, I think, were YYZ, Natural Science, and Anthem. I think those were the three he did. He's just killing on those. He grew up with all of those records. He remembers. I remember talking to Deen one time, and he goes, I've just always had this ability to kind of comp something, just to, I hear it, and then I can kind of copy it. Like he was saying, even with his voice, to be able to kind of copy Steve Perry's, intonation. And so from a drum standpoint, he remembers, all the different little things that Neil did in Natural Science. Of course, he's, slaying out on Anthem, but just that he can access that kind of clarity to remember. So it makes it so he can learn these tracks really fast. I think he said that Premonition with Tony McAlpine, there was just a couple of weeks that they kind of worked it out and then just recorded it. And the whole rock thing is covered for me in Deen's playing, because he's playing all those songs with bad English, which was never really pressed. Hardline, once again, very melodic, vocal rock, right down the center. And he's playing very, very responsible rock parts. He's not, this wasn't a shrapnel fest. It wasn't Steve Vai. He was playing what the music required. And yet he would turn around and, like I said, play like Kill the Guy with a Ball and just be going adventurous in 50 different directions, right? Just to make some fantastical sort of music experience. Deen has that, and it has really affected me. It has affected me because we're in the same area. It's because everybody knows everybody. We all know each other. But also really because it's just, I've always said this, he deserves it. A lot of people are like, I don't know, it's weird when you're from a place and everybody starts questioning whether that guy, should really be famous or not. I'm like, he deserves it. He really has something that has really added to drumming. Now, he's had his life go like a roller coaster, and of course, and he's owned that in the last couple of years. There's just way too much for me to talk about. Very hard for me to watch from a person who doesn't have any substance issues of any kind. I've just always tried to just be that other person. But to watch that, I thought we were going to lose Deen a couple times there, and thankfully we didn't. And so he's, rebuilding his life again. And hopefully, it seems to be finding a better circle of people and situations for him to stay in his sobriety. So anyway, he's very vocal about all of those changes and being committed to his family. Which is super great from my standpoint, because, you don't want to lose another guy who has things to say in music. I mean, that's just a huge loss for all of us musicians. And so it's just been hard to watch. I'm glad that it's, like I always say, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And so if he's finishing strong, with his life and his family together, that's a super win. And so I absolutely encourage all of that in that way. So just to get back to drumming, though, his approach to triplets, I can't think of anybody who did that back then. And so it's hard. Sometimes history's a little funny thing, because everybody goes, wow, Steve Gadd, it wasn't that good, or Neil Peart, or, they just go off on the out of context. But when you're in that context and you remember what was happening in rock music, and then here comes Deen into the picture, it was a huge leap forward for me in a very particular melody-driven sort of drumming. And, once again, I found out later, well, it's because he sings. And so he sings great. There's so many things I could just ramble on about Deen. But just know that the triplet thing, the broken double bass thing, and then just the bombastic flooding of double bass notes in these monster fill sort of streams, this has really affected me. And so there are a few fills where I just go, oh, that's totally a Deen fill. When I play it, I can't help but think, that's where that inspiration came from. And so this whole series is a tribute to all of those people who ended up in my playing in some way. There's a lot of Deen in my playing in those ways. When I think of rock music, there isn't anybody. He's the guy that comes to my mind. There's obviously, if I could just make videos, like I said, if I had posters of all the inspirational drummers, every inch of every wall would be covered. I'm just trying to get down to whatever, the 20 or 19 or whatever, that just really had an impact to the point where it's more impact than the others, where they really profoundly affected my course. Those early records that Deen played on, man, you couldn't wait for another one, because you just didn't know what kind of idea he was going to have. And that's the core of any artist, is to be able to represent themselves in a new way. And I like the quote that says, discovery is seeing what everyone else has seen, but thinking what no one else has thought. And that's what I think about when I would hear those recordings with Deen. I'm like, man, nobody else is thinking like this. This is like a new way of thinking. That is so inspirational to me. I just want to be one of those people. So, Deen, this is for you, and I hope you're doing well, and thank you.